Bartholomew Town is brought to you in part by the University of Rhode Island Online, Navigant Credit Union, the Audubon Society of Rhode Island, Newport Film, and Half Street Group.
Bartholomew Town.
Okay, so adding to what is already a booming ecosystem here in Rhode Island when it comes to really broadly speaking arts and culture, specifically music, and honestly tapping into a piece of Rhode Island's music community that is often overlooked, which is, you can call it the country scene, you can call it just sort of the soulful music scene. We often think of Providence and we think of, some of the warehouse spaces and things like that. We often think of Newport and we think of Newport folk and jazz. But a new initiative, Nashville North, launched this year by the United Theater in Westerly, aims to bridge the cultural relevance between Nashville and Westerly. And I guess before we get going, boy, that's a statement that, having grown up in South County, I'm not sure I would have ever made, except for it makes perfect sense having attended the Washington County Fair and knowing just how many great country fans and country artists actually have emerged from Rhode Island, particularly when you take a look at the western part of the state. I guess if each of you want to introduce yourselves, we'll get into this thing.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bill. I'm Carly Callahan, the executive director here at the United.
And I'm Tony Nunes. I'm the artistic director of the United.
Where did this idea come from for Nashville North?
So about a year ago, I had a conversation with the wonderful Scott Swift, as in Taylor's dad. He is, and they are right down the road from us at various points of the year. And Scott was one of the founding supporters of the United back when the project was taking shape. So that was a previously existing relationship, and he has been fantastic in looking at what we're doing here at the United and finding those places of opportunity. And he came to me last summer and, said, wouldn't it be amazing to take some of the programming and the creative energy from the Bluebird down in Nashville and bring it up north? I mean, the Bluebird is just such a sanctified place for lovers of music around the world, frankly, and has an authenticity to it and highlights singer-songwriters and how they have, a direct pipeline to the songs and the spirit behind the songs. And so his idea was to capture some of that energy and implant it up here in Westerly, specifically for the reasons that are pre-existing in Westerly. Westerly has such a provenance with music and Americana music, with the blues, of course, and the Knickerbocker and Guild guitar. And it's not like this is coming from a place where we're making it up. There actually is an organic, beautiful, storied history of music in this area. And from that, today, in real time, there's a concentration of musicians and creatives in this area that's really intense. I think if you were to heat map Westerly and this region, it would be aglow. And so Scott's brilliant idea was to take that Bluebird, beautiful energy down there, bring it up north and create a pipeline. And when Tony and I went down to meet the wonderful Erica, who leads the Bluebird, Erica Nichols, down south, we were also lucky enough to be introduced to the Country Music Hall of Fame and Taylor Swift Education Center and their Words and Music program, which is now implemented in our schools. The folks at Southwest Airlines, who are partners with the Bluebird, and they just launched their direct flight last week between Providence and Nashville. So the stars really aligned, and our job was to take that opportunity, knit it together, and announce Nashville North on March 5th as an overarching concept that encompasses the Bluebird, country music, country artists, and the educational piece as well, with the Words and Music program, of which we're a program participant. And as I mentioned, we're implementing right now here at the United. So it was definitely one of those situations where the ingredients to the recipe were there. It was our job to get in the kitchen and get cooking.
Yeah, it's great in terms of identifying, like you said, heat mapping Westerly. It is interesting because it is a hotspot and has been over different periods. And in particular, right now, I think it's important to note, you've noted well what the Bluebird is. It's the key Monday night open mic in Nashville. You call up at 11 o'clock and try to get on the list. There's other open mics that have kind of created a spillover ecosystem environment. People travel to Nashville just to play or even just to observe, just to go to this open mic. And yeah, it's pretty prestigious. It there was a TV show based around the place, and a lot of well-known artists and also really well-known writers have come from the Bluebird. The United Theater, though, I think it's important to note the position that the United Theater has had in Westerly. It's the recipient of, actually, it was originally built in 1926, but following an arts bond, something that we advocate for here all the time on Bartholomew Town, it reopened in 2021, a $17 million renovation. And the proof is in the pudding when you take a look at downtown Westerly, which is beautiful, has Wilcox Park in its center. There are great venues that, like you said, the Knickerbocker, there's definitely an ecosystem. And another piece as well, which is that there's an Amtrak station allowing for a pipeline between everywhere, but New York and Boston in particular. So the United has become a centerpiece and perhaps in many ways a key example of how investment in the arts creates not only cultural activity, but it creates real deal economic activity. If you could just kind of riff on the notion of here's why we invest in, for all those people out there that are skeptical of why we ought to invest in arts infrastructure, what's your pitch?
Thank you for setting it up so beautifully. The United this year is on track to welcome over 65,000 people through its doors. It's a lot of humans coming to Westerly that are from around here, but at some of our concerts, we are tracking people from all over the country, and in fact, in some cases internationally, that are here to come through our doors. And by bringing in nationally recognized artists to Westerly, we're obviously driving tourism, increasing foot traffic, creating new opportunities for local businesses, and strengthening the town's identity as a cultural hub, which is really critical. And I feel like Westerly does a beautiful job at celebrating its history, but also holding in the same space a real creative energy and looking forward. And for us at the United, we do not use the term the arts in any prescriptive way. And Tony can speak to this the best. Our programming is totally all over the map, deliberately so, because we believe that by bringing people into space together vis-a-vis the arts, we are creating community in a way that's more important now than ever. There's the world that we're living in right now, Bill, is in many ways just this, right? And this is how we're experiencing one another, experiencing community, et cetera. But what we're lacking is the fundamental satisfaction that comes when we bring people into space together and we recognized our shared humanity, empathy, all of the things that are intrinsic to our human experience. And that's what we're trying to do at the United. On the commercial side of that, though, that translates into real dollars. All those people that are coming to the United, they're going out to restaurants, they're staying at the hotels, they're experiencing what we like to call the cultural campus. That is not just us, but it's the park, it's the Nick, it's the Granite, it's the new Museum of American Impressionism happening up the street. It's the nooks and crannies that are occupied with artists and makers in our region. And we couldn't be more proud to be really carrying the torch in that regard.
Yeah, and for those on audio only, just to jump in here, you picked up your phone when you said we're in this mode, and it's so true that that's the pipeline that many people are interacting, never mind just with music, but with each other. And this undoubtedly has created a crisis right now in this moment. Tony, if you want to talk programming and how that programming impacts the mission broadly.
Yeah, I mean, we opened in 2021, as you said, which was a very difficult time to open a venue because so many venues around the world essentially were closing because of COVID. We opened at that time, with an idea of what we wanted to do, but maybe some openness about how to do it. What we've learned, we have 3 movie theaters here. We have a performing arts venue where we do a lot of music. We do comedy. We work with ballet RI. We do opera. We do a lot of different things. We also have a music school downstairs that services 400 students per week coming for weekly lessons in every instrument and voice. And then, we have a small gallery space that we do events in multiple times a night every week. So we had this idea in the sense of what we wanted to do, and it turned out we're doing a little bit of everything. We've created a space that is very inclusive too, and we're doing a lot of programming for everyone. We do culinary events, we do film series, we do first run film, book talks. We do a lot, but in the music world, we're really building a route here. Westerly is not known as a place as a stopover for touring artists. So is Providence. With the closure of the Columbus Theater And some of the venues of that size not existing in Rhode Island, it was a great opportunity for us to say, hey, here's a great spot. And we've been building this route and building this momentum in booking bands, and it's increasing, month over month. And this Nashville initiative is really going to help pipeline these artists here, not just through the Bluebird, and not just country music, Americana music, classic rock music. There's a lot of things that could come out of Nashville, out of this initiative. And, we want to be known as a venue for everyone, but we also really want to do some great music programming. So this initiative is very exciting for us.
It's critical. As an indie artist myself, I can say for sure that things have changed so dramatically in terms of routing, in terms of how you think about even going out on the road at this point. And for example, an artist like M. Ward, who is, one of my favorite artists. When Transfiguration of Vincent came out in whatever it was, 2004, I remember the first time I heard it, I pulled over to the side of the road because I was so moved. I was like, what is this? That is not music that's going to cut through necessarily on Spotify. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would guess that M. Ward is not one of your top 500 artists on Spotify. Yet there's a constituency there for an artist like that. There is an ecosystem out there. And if Westerly, Rhode Island can become a part of that ecosystem, that's good for everybody. And that allows for interesting and independent music to grow in a way that if Westerlies weren't there, who knows what indie music in general, using that in a writ large term, Americana, folk, country, indie pop, whatever, who knows where the genre goes. So you play a critical role in amplifying a challenging moment for, we'll say, non-K-pop and non-pop music in the online space.
Yeah, the beauty of curating music the way we do is people are now coming to shows for bands they've never heard of or they're not familiar with because they trust the programming. They trust that it's going to be a great night out, it's going to be a great event, and they're going to be introduced to a new artist. We have shows coming up with Hamilton Lighthouser, Neil Francis. These are amazing musicians that a lot of people know, but the people who don't but trust the United to bring these great artists here, they're coming out and they're exploring and finding new music and new sounds coming through our doors. And I think that's the greatest thing you can say as a venue.
Right. That's such an interesting statement. I lived in Newport for a couple of years, and I would absolutely agree that it was an interesting study, having come from New York, that you have a music vocabulary that the average person who in any other town might wear a Red Sox hat, and you ask them who their favorite artist is, they might say, I don't know, this is random, but they might say, oh, I love Luke Combs, or something like that, like a major country artist. Whereas in Newport, someone might say, oh, I really love Dawes or Sun Kill Moon or whatever because of the folk or Kamasi Washington. You'll see people who would not necessarily be hipsters or super plugged into music wearing a Kamasi Washington t-shirt because they have access either directly on the ground through the festival or through that second tier of someone saying, hey, I was at the festival this weekend and I saw this amazing artist, you should check this out. It spreads music, it raises the vocabulary and the cultural awareness of a community by doing exactly what you're doing, planting your flag and saying, hey, trust us, what we do is good, and you should be motivated to come out just because you're going to leave with something that you didn't have before. Talk about that a little more if you could.
Yeah, and I think, to add to that, it's also, and to go back to the challenge of the world we lived in during the pandemic, people got out of the habit of just coming out to support live music. And what we're finding is that because of Tony's curation and kind of building the trust in our community and the audience, that if you come to the United, you're going to have a great night of music, regardless of whether or not you're walking in those doors as a fan, is critical. And we're changing that habit that was formed and in some ways calcified over the course of the pandemic. It's like we're trying to push against a behavior of like staying home and sitting on your couch. And it's working. I think that there is no replication in the digital space for what happens when you bring people into space together and they're experiencing live music, full stop. But it's our job and our duty to be able to provide the opportunity for people to not only do it, but do it repeatedly, get in the habit of doing it, and have a trust with us and our programming and our quality so that they can take a risk. But part of that too is that like being in a place like Westerly, and I'm from New York too, you don't have the barriers to entry that you do in a lot of other locations. You know, it's like you can park close by. There's a lot of places to eat, like you're in and out. We're trying to make the experience as seamless and as satisfying for our audience as possible. So it's not just about what happens during the show. It's about providing an amazing experience from the minute people decide to buy a ticket to the minute, you know, they're sitting at home and kind of ruminating on it. We're trying to really exceed expectations in that regard. And thankfully, this is the type of community where you can do that and you can manipulate the variables of the experience from the jump, which is great.
And we're lucky because we built this place as a black box model for our larger performance space. And we have a fixed balcony. It was the original balcony in the theater, and we flattened out the rest of the floor. That allows us to we can do intimate shows. We just had Bill Nershi from String Cheese Incident. He did a very intimate show here this past week, where we can just add, a couple hundred chairs on the floor. We can do a fully seated show. Our capacity for fully seated is 432. But we can take all the seats out and do a standing room show with 600 people on the floor and 100 people seated in the balcony. So we have a wide range of possibilities, and that allows us to bring a lot of different artists and experiences to our audiences.
Yes, and it creates, as you both have noted, it creates that third place situation where not home, not work, but the third place, that's the economic generation piece, which is critical because that's what stands everything up at the end of the day, unless Taylor Swift wants to just provide unlimited money. There has to be some economic development piece there. Yeah. How does this impact Rhode Island artists? Because Rhode Island has a great music community. It's somewhat subdivided, I would say, as a participant in it and as a curator myself. It's subdivided into different categories. Sometimes they do overlap. How can you be a hub for Rhode Island's collection of great songwriters, great bands, great producers across different genres and sort of cross-pollinate in a way that not only puts Westerly on the map, but kind of elevates the Rhode Island brand, creatively speaking, on maybe a global level?
Well, the Knickerbocker Music Center around the corner is our sister venue. We showcase a lot of Rhode Island-based musicians through there. We do feature a lot of Rhode Island musicians here as well. Like I said, we have a smaller space, a more intimate gallery space where we do concerts. What the Bluebird does for the open mic, that piece currently is not what we'll be doing here. We'll be taking some of the more known entities in the songwriting community down there in Nashville in that pipeline of talent from the Bluebird and bringing them up here. But we do run our own open mics at the Nick and other places. And here at the United, we're kind of invested in building those future musicians. And like I said, we have a music school here that services over 400 students a week. And they range anywhere from, a 6-year-old to an 80-year-old. And we have an amazing music school director. His name is Tom Foley, and he does a great job in building opportunities for these kids to perform all over the state. And we've built an open mic for kids, which is not something you'll find anywhere else, or I haven't at least, for 6th to 12th graders, where they go on stage every other month. They perform either their own original music, which is always amazing, or they play over tracks, or they play covers. So we're really invested in kind of building a pipeline of new musicians and offering a place to showcase them as well.
Yeah, the music school is huge in creating this ecosystem where, we have our artists on stage, we have our audience watching those artists. Downstairs in our music school in real time, we're building the next generation of both, which we think is so important. And just an example of that is last Tuesday, we were at the airport to celebrate the first direct flight between Nashville and Providence with Southwest, which was great. And performing was the wonderful Kara McKee, who's fantastic and is a friend of ours and is just such a talent, and obviously is geographically speaking very aligned with both Nashville and with Rhode Island. And then we had an 8th grader, Isabella Spears, who is an up and comer, and she was performing alongside fantastic young artists, and we're sending her down to the Country Music Hall of Fame advanced songwriting camp this summer. So she's going to be able to go down there, kind of be steeped in that world, and then bring it back up here. So it's about providing a space for people now and tomorrow, which is huge. And I think is really, when we talk about sustainability, that's what real sustainability looks like. We're looking at what is the United to Rhode Island and the Northeast, not just now, but 10, 15, 20 years from now too. So we're putting those pieces in place.
No question about it. I think it's worth noting. I'm friends with her, and she's an amazing artist on her own. She stands up on her own. She's had a lot of success on her own. But Karen McKee is Governor McKee's daughter.
Right.
What is, and I think this kind of works in both directions. Do you feel like the governor, because his daughter is an active participant in this world, is more able to understand the importance of providing or funding or noting or highlighting a space like the United Theater? And do you feel like Rhode Island, from a leadership standpoint right now, is in a good position to grow this community from a governmental side?
I do. I mean, it's wonderful to see the governor here and to see the place in action. We can put the most amazing video assets out and socials and everything else, but it's like, again, this is an analog experience in a digital world. And so for the governor to be able to come down here and see this in action is huge. Rhode Island Commerce has also been a huge supporter of ours. They just were sponsors of our Soupy Fest that happened on Saturday, which is a whole nother conversation, but another example of this place at work. And, I think that the advantage of Rhode Island is that because of its small size, leadership is able to see places like ours in action. And when they see it in action, they see the impact. The impact is real, both on a quantitative side, but also on a qualitative side. You feel an energy in the room, and that's undeniable. So we're appreciative of the support in that regard for sure.
NashvilleNorthRI.com is where you can find the information that'll get you, if you're listening right now, what you'd want to know about what's happening. Look, New York City, Los Angeles, Austin, Texas, Nashville, Berlin, London, Sao Paulo, Westerly, Rhode Island.
That's right, Bill. I love it.
There it is. Thank you both so much for your time. Appreciate it.
All right,
Thanks so much, Bill.
Hey, thanks for stopping by Bartholomew Town. For more content, follow me on Instagram @Bill Bartholomew.